Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 2024 Sales Engineer webinar with special guest John Kerr of Mastering Technical Sales and Scott Petrie of CloudShare. My name is Jeremy Hess, Digital Marketing Manager at CloudShare, and I'll be your moderator for this session. The CloudShare team is thrilled to have John join us, and we're so glad to have you all with us today as well. Just a few things to note, housekeeping before we kick off the presentation. First off, we are recording the session, so we'll have that out to you by email tomorrow. I'd like to also invite everyone to ask questions via the Q&A window, which you can toggle on at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to go ahead and answer them throughout the session, and we'll definitely save some of those for the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. If you want to use the chat button, you know where that is, also at the bottom of the screen. And just to keep everyone on their toes, expect a couple of polls. We're going to go ahead and poll the audience and get some answers to some interesting questions that we think are relevant to help contextualize the predictions and information that we'll be sharing today. So please go ahead and vote as those pop up. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce John Kerr, Managing Director of Mastering Technical Sales, leading author who has written 2 books with a 3rd one underway. He's worked with some of the largest tech companies in the world and built world-class SE organizations. He's also been an IT executive as well as an engineer, so he's seen both sides of the executive desk. And we also have with us Scott, as I mentioned earlier. He's a solutions engineer at CloudShare, and he advises leading software companies on how cloud-based virtual IT labs can enable them to modernize, enhance, and grow their training, sales, marketing, R&D, and support operations. So what we're going to do right away off the bat is we're going to go ahead and ask you guys a poll question. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that one up right now. Okay, everyone should see the poll question on their screen. Do you deliver virtual demos or virtual POCs today? So we're going to go ahead and give about 15 more seconds or so, let everyone answer, and then we'll go ahead and share that polling information with everyone. Okay, great. We'll give about 3 more seconds. 3, 2, 1. Stop it there and go ahead and share the results. And as you can see, about 50% are doing both. So that's fantastic. 39% demos, fewer just POCs. Some of you guys are not running them at all, and a couple planning as well. So great stuff. So we'll go ahead and move on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and give John the control of the screen. And John, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Okay, thank you very much, Jeremy. This is the most dangerous part of the seminar, when you're passing control from one person to another. So here we go. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everybody. Jeremy, it's totally ignoring me. Oh, there we go. Okay, awesome. Yeah. So I'm going to spend about 35-40 minutes discussing what's going to be happening to the profession of sales engineering or solution architects over the course of the next 5 years. And you're wondering, why did I pick 2024? It's probably ages me a little bit, but my very first job as a sales engineer was back in 1984. And I started thinking about the technology that we used in 1984, and then 1994 and 2004, and you get the idea. So I figured I'd look ahead a little bit and figure out what was going to be happening in 2024. So the way I thought to do that is I stole an idea from politicians, and they don't always have great ideas. But one of the things that happens over here in the United States, which is where I'm based now, is every year the president gets up and gives what's called the State of the Union and talks about what's happened in the past and what is going to be happening in the future. So I thought, well, let's talk about the State of the Union. What is the current State of the Union for sales engineers? And the answer, unfortunately, is confusion. That might seem a very strange word to start with. So let me put a little bit of context and explain what that means or what's behind it. And the reason is that we can't even agree on a title for our profession and what we do. In my travels across the world, I've now encountered probably 40 or 50 different names for what we actually do. So pre-sales engineers, solution architects, solution engineers, advisory engineers, sales consultants, you name it. But fundamentally, deep down, what we actually do, no matter what we're called, is the same. And that's what I really want to focus on over the next 30, 40 minutes. So I'm going to pose a little question to you. So if you think back, all of you, when you were 8, 9, 10 years old, sitting around the dinner table with your parents or your grandparents, and they looked at you and they said, Billy, Carl, Chris, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm prepared to bet that not one of you said, Mommy, I want to be a pre-sales engineer. Yeah, here we are. There's over 500,000 of us in the world right now. And that number is growing at about a 7.5 to 8% clip. So right now, being a sales engineer, or whatever you want to call yourself, is actually a pretty good place to be. The job is in high demand, to the point that companies all over the world are not just trying to recruit sales engineers from one another, that they're building their own and recruiting directly out of college and out of university. Now, the position itself does actually pose a few questions as well. And I call this the cocktail party question. Here you see the graphic, and it's spot the sales engineer. And the challenge I like to throw out to people, and if any of you want to respond to this in chat, please go ahead. But if you were to try to define what does a sales engineer do in 1 or 2 sentences when you're speaking to somebody at a cocktail party, what is it? I've been struggling with this for 30 years, so I'd love to know what some other people might think as to what's a 1 or 2 sentence definition of a sales engineer that the regular person could understand who isn't necessarily in IT or business. Yeah, someone responded, I sell stuff, and I think that's the sales part of the sales engineering title. We've got complex business challenges with software. Someone else is a little more directed. I secure the internet. Partner with salespeople to provide solution expertise. Hey, Stephanie, how are you? The technical conscience of the sales force. So you kind of get the idea. I always found as soon as I started talking about the fact that I'm in some kind of technology, people always wanted me to fix their Wi-Fi or look at their printers. So kind of drove me crazy. Now, I do say though, there is hope. Sales engineering is now a defined profession. It's recognized by governments and departments of labor all over the world. This is a screenshot I took actually a year or 2 ago. The Bureau of Labor Statistics from the United States. You can find similar pages in the UK, Singapore, Australia, Germany, and it kind of defines sales engineers. It says, sales engineers sell complex scientific and technological products and services to business. Now, I highlight a couple of things that are mentioned on the slides. 1, work under stressful conditions. 2, work long and irregular hours to meet sales goals and client needs. It doesn't even mention working with all kinds of random salespeople as well who have weird and wonderful demands. So I think they pretty much nailed it in terms of what the profession actually is. And the really cool thing about it is there's hope. There's hope because all over the world, there are sales engineering organizations that are starting up. So for example, again, here in the United States, there's the NSSE, the National Sales Engineering Organization, and it's at the college level, it's at universities, so it's undergraduates, 18, 19, 20-year-old students who are either in engineering or in sales and marketing, and they want to learn more about being a sales engineer. So through my company, Mastering Technical Sales, and some other large companies out there, VMware, one of them that's involved, we're actually sponsoring competitions and organizations in the US, and now we're spreading across the globe, to actually encourage these 19, 20, 21-year-olds to progress into the profession of sales engineering. That has never ever happened before. And I think that is absolutely fantastic that it's happening now. There are about 15 or 16 universities that actually have sales engineering groups that get together on a regular basis and talk about how to be a sales engineer. So the profession is maturing, it's recognized, wonderful things are in place for us. So now let's look ahead. Let's kind of set the scene. So let's talk about the 2024 sales engineer, or solution architect, one of the other popular descriptions for it, and answer 3 questions. The first one is, will the job still exist by 2024? The second question is, assuming that's the case, what's going to happen over the next 5 years to the job? And then third, and probably most important for those of you on the call, what are some things that you can actually do to prepare if you're still going to be in this profession over the next 5 years? So let's take a look at this. So is the role still going to exist? And I think the best way of answering that question is seeing, what do your customers actually think? And what do your customers think about the role of a sales engineer? So let me share a little bit of data with you. So a while back, my company partnered with a large software company and another consulting company, and we asked this question of almost 1,900 mid to senior level executives, and we said, what are the skills that you value most in a vendor's technical sales team? And a few of them didn't understand what a pre-sales engineer was, so we had to explain that to them. The person who comes along with a sales rep and actually knows how the product works. So they kind of got that. What's interesting is what they said. And I took out all the fancy bills. These are the top 5 things that your clients want from you. Number 1 is someone who understands their business. Now, this isn't necessarily the day-to-day minutiae of the operations within their business, but for example, if you're selling to, let's say, a pharmaceutical company, an R&D division, you need to understand the concept of clinical trials and how they gather patients and run protocols and so on. So someone who understands my business. The second one is someone who can design innovative solutions with my staff. I think there's 2 key words there. One is innovative, and the second one is with. Number 3, someone who can clearly and effectively communicate with me. And that with me being the mid to senior level executive, on the basis that it's no good understanding my business and being incredibly innovative if you can't actually explain that to me and the people who work for me. Number 4 is someone I can trust to do the right thing for my company. So that's the classic trusted advisor. As you'll see in a bit, sales engineers are in the absolute best position to become the trusted advisor to the clients. I think this is so important that this is what I wrote my second book about. And number 5 is someone who has deep technical knowledge. Now, what's interesting is if you look behind this data, we spent a bit of time analyzing it with the other consulting company, the confidence factors, the statistics behind the top 4 answers, well over 85% of the respondents said that. Deep technical knowledge, which came in 5th, had about a 42% confidence factor. So to put it in poker terminology, deep technical knowledge is now table stakes. It's what's expected of you that you either have deep technical knowledge or that you can bring it to bear on your customers. But those other 4 things are so much more important now. And this has changed. If you went back 20 years ago and you asked for priorities, deep technical knowledge, I'm prepared to bet, as we're ramping up into the dot-com boom, would have been number 1. It certainly was in the 1970s when the sales engineering position was first created. But now, all these other consultative things have been layered on top of the actual role itself. And what's interesting is the job of the salesperson has not changed at all. It's barely budged. It's still sell stuff, right, as quickly as possible. Yet the role of the SE has changed dramatically. We've become far more consultative, far more of an emphasis on communication skills and relationship building, which you can almost think of as some of the salesy side of things. So that's what your customers want. And then what's actually the value of a sales engineer? So over the past 3 years, we've been doing a cumulative survey. And we asked that question, you see there up at the top. Throughout your technology purchase, which of these sources and groups provided the most value to you and your team? And we asked that question of middle management. We asked that question of individuals in IT. And we asked the question of executives. And we gave them 4 choices. The choices were general collateral, which are things they can find on the website, Gartner report, Aberdeen, things like that. The sales team that they worked with, so the sales rep and sales management. The technical team, so that's pre and post sales, and then executives from the vendor. And you'll notice something kind of interesting here, no big surprise, is that the technical team came out way ahead of everybody else in terms of value. So it means that middle management believes that SEs are twice as valuable as the salespeople that they work with. Individuals in IT believe they're more than twice as valuable. And even executives believe that you're almost twice as valuable as the salespeople that you work with. So if anybody on the vendor side, the technology vendor side, is in a best position to provide value and therefore gain trust with the customer, it's absolutely the technical team. And then just for a bit of fun, we point out the second statistic here with the dotted red lines, is that middle management actually believes that general collateral in many cases is more valuable than the salespeople they deal with directly. Now, you can certainly go back and poke fun at the salespeople that you work with. I would point out, if you're a believer in the challenger sale and the latest reports from companies like Gartner, they state, and the stats a little in doubt, that companies now are 55 or 60% of the way through the sales cycle when they engage with you as a vendor. So if a salesperson cannot do more than just parrot back, replicate what's on a website, they don't actually provide a lot of value other than giving last minute discounts. So I think between the fact that customers value the SE position more than anybody else on the vendor side and those 5 wants, we're pretty safe in assuming that the role of the SE is still going to be around in 2024. So let's move forward a little bit and talk about, well, what may happen in 2024. So this is one of my favorite quotes. It's actually from a Danish author whose name I cannot pronounce. But I think it's a pretty good prediction, as it says, about the future. So let's just very quickly look organizationally. I like to think that this is how leadership thinks about the sales engineering team, that they're a finely tuned orchestra. They each support each other. They each can back people up. They can play a beautiful melody, a beautiful symphony. And that's how kind of sales leadership and SE leadership might think about the SA team. The harsh reality is, though, this is what salespeople think about you. That you are a one-man band. That you can do pretty much everything, and you can chip in for sales, marketing, product management, product marketing, even the legal and compliance and finance sometimes as well. So the sales view of the SE is certainly far more wider and encompassing than necessarily leadership thinks about it. So given that, what's going to happen over the next 5 years? What are some predictions? So I'm going to go through a few. This is intended to be a little bit thought-provoking. Some of these things, you'll say, hey, John, this is already happening. And yeah, sure, that's true. It makes prediction easier. I think that one of the biggest things is the people that you are going to be selling to, and even the generation of sales engineers, is going to be changing dramatically. Millennials are going to be the largest generation, certainly by 2025, both on the vendor side, actually selling, demoing, presenting the products, and on the customer side. In fact, many of the older millennials now, born in the mid to late 80s, are now in management. Some are in senior management. The way they operate, the way they buy is very different. The way that they collaborate is very different. Now, I'm a late baby boomer, so I'm on the cusp of baby boomers and Generation X. So 1.5 generations away from the millennials. But as we go on and on, the way the products are sold and the way products are bought are going to be shaped by the attitudes of the people that we actually sell to. And I'm not sure that some of the mainstream vendors have totally figured this out yet. They certainly want to go out there and hire millennials. I'm not necessarily sure that they're selling or changing their selling practices. So what are some predictions that we could possibly make about what's going to happen to the job over the next 5 years? I think this is the interesting stuff. So the first one is that the role of the sales engineer, the AM, the account manager, will start to overlap even more. 15, 20 years ago, it was very apparent that there was massive differences between the sales guy and the technical dude. Sales guy wore the suit, did the negotiation, understood the business, and the technical guy or gal went along, did the demos. If you were lucky, they dressed up neatly and had matching shoes and socks. It's kind of changed. As we said, what customers are expecting from us now is we need to be far more consultative and we need to be far more focused on relationships. So SEs are becoming more consultative, more business oriented. I don't think the account managers are changing very much. There are very few sales forces in the world who are trying to make their salespeople more technical. Just think about that. So I think the roles are going to start to overlap even more. And before, where there used to be gaps between what SEs did, what account managers did, and there was kind of a gray area in the middle, now there's an overlap. And I think that the conflicts and the issues arise when both the AM and the sales engineer are capable of doing the same thing, and you have to figure out who's actually going to do it. So that the partnership, the marriage, if you like, between the SE and the AM has changed dramatically in the last 5 to 10 years and will continue to do so. A little bit of visual humor there from the slide designers. The low end of the job will become automated. What's the low end of the job? So that's things, for example, that pretty much most SEs hate to do. So RFIs and RFPs. There's very few people on this call who I think would put their hand up and say, John, I love to do RFPs. As a former CIO, I would say that an RFP stood for really fast paperwork. How quickly could you say yes to all the different questions that the potential client had? So RFIs, RFPs will become increasingly automated. There's a bunch of companies out there now that do a fairly good job of the boilerplate and adding onto it, Rupio and others such as that. Secondly, the repetitive part of things such as demos are going to become automated as well. So certainly you can go to a number of vendors' websites now or YouTube channels and you can watch canned demos, and that's great. I think the ability for customers to be able to customize those demos and almost pick and choose off a menu and to watch a more personalized version of a demo is increasingly going to happen as well. And then the third part is going to be things such as the setup of POCs and evals and trials. But without being the old guy who says, back in the day, or when I were a lad, back in the day, we used to take honking great big 9-inch tapes and load them onto IBM mainframes or DEC faxes and load software that way and hope the systems programmer knew what he was doing. Now it's radically different. You can encapsulate a proof of concept or an eval system, like stick it up in the cloud somewhere. You can monitor it, see what's going on. So I think that part of the role is increasingly becoming automated as well. And that's a good thing. And that's just 3 examples of automation. There's a bunch more as well. I don't think the SE is going to get automated out of existence, but I think it will mean that we'll be able to focus on the fun stuff, the architecture, and the people, and not too much on the mundane things. Leading on in terms of the demo becomes far more experiential. And what I mean by that is that the customer will actually start living the demo. So there are companies out there now experimenting with enhanced reality and virtual reality to better show their systems to their customers, or allowing the customers to pick and choose a whole bunch of different options such that the demo becomes very, very focused in exactly what the customer wants. So you think about it, if you're a security vendor or CRM vendor, whatever it is, if there's a way to make the customer actually live through the proverbial day in the life of your software, but crash that up into 15 or 20-minute demo, I think it's going to really help the customer understand how they can use your software. And then the customers will start looking for gain and good things they can do with your stuff, as opposed to getting rid of pain, which are making problems go away. So I think that'll lead us to far more trials and evals with 0 vendor interaction. Right now, I'd say for many companies, the bottom 25 or 30% in terms of deal size trials and evals are done with people downloading software or firing up a virtual machine up in the cloud. That's going to go way, way higher in the food chain, as it were. And I think it's only going to be very, very large trials and evals, complexity driven. It's going to require a lot of vendor interaction. Otherwise, that'll be automated and we'll just be able to sit on top of it and monitor it. And I think that's a good thing for SEs as well. Knowing the customer and trust is actually going to make all the difference. I believe that sales engineers are the oil that makes the engine of sales works and removes friction from the sales process. In order to do that, the SEs need to get closer to their customers, and not just the techies. The old style of the SEs work with the techies and the salesperson worked with the executives and the line of business people, that's 15, 20 years old. That's out of vogue now. The way the really top-class companies are doing it even now is you look for who's the best person to build the relationship. And if it's a 24-year-old sales engineer who can build rapport and a relationship with a 53-year-old CIO or CISO or CTO, then you let it happen. And that's the way it goes. Culture aside, trust is going to start making even more difference than it has done over the last 10 years, and companies are really going to get into the whole trusted advisor concept of the program and not just talk about it, but actually do it. So that means that SEs will deal with more and more executives. No longer will you be consigned to talking to Steve, who lives in the cubicle in the basement with the leaky pipe and no air conditioning. You'll be able to go up the food chain and have more and more business-oriented conversations with executives. And that's only a good thing as well. An NESE who allows himself or herself to be pinned down to just dealing with individual contributor or first-line management in IT, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. So that's a lot of things the SE won't be doing. What will the SE be doing? I think a lot of the SE value lies in architecture and in complex interactions and setups with the customer and knowing what other people have done. It always used to amaze me, being an SE and an SE manager and going up the chain, when I went to visit my customers, the amazing things that they were doing with my software and my hardware that hadn't even been designed for. So knowing some of the off-label uses for your software, for your solution set, your portfolio, I think is important as well as just understanding the classic speeds and feeds and how it all works together. So being able to design things and put them together and solve complex problems with complex architectures is still going to be the value of the sales engineer. And I don't believe that's going to be automated for at least 10, 12 years. So I think that's a good place to be. Laptops, I think, are going to disappear. I have one of my clients now who's who's experimenting with holographic projections running off iPads. So just think about that. You know, it used to be the case where the amount of software that you could demo was limited by the size of the laptop. Then VMware came along, and we started getting virtual machines, and we could start running things in different virtual machines. And that kind of enabled us to compact more stuff. Now we have the cloud, and things are stored up on the cloud. Very little is actually stored on the laptop anymore, and it's pretty much going to become a presentation device. So if you think about artificial intelligence and virtual reality, enhanced reality, along with holographic projections, that's where demos are going to be in 2024, 2025. And as I say, there are companies working with it now, so it's going to be pretty cool. And then, last but not least, I think we'll have the death of cold calls. And the last COBOL programmer, who lives about 20 minutes away from me in New Jersey in the US, is making $2,000 an hour, is probably going to retire and move down to Florida. So modern technology will actually kick in and it will take over. So that's just some projections about where we're going to go in the future. Jeremy, this might be a good time before we start talking about what you can do to prepare for what's going to happen next, to see if there's any writing questions from the audience or anybody has questions. So if you've got questions out there, folks, type them in, give us a bit of interaction.
Let's check the chat window here.
Or as they say, what questions do you have for me? That's the proper phrase.
We have one question from Chris in the Q&A. We'll do that one now. How's that?
Sure.
So it says, do you predict the ratio of sales engineer to account manager will be pushed higher as certain low-end aspects, in quotes low-end, aspects of the job get more automated or cloud hosted?
I think that's going to depend. That's going to depend, like most things in sales engineering, on who you're selling to. So I have seen a trend in the last 18 months where companies who are selling into what I call the big honking global strategic accounts, if they're looking to add one incremental headcount to their team, it's more likely to be a sales engineer than to a salesperson. So the ratio of SEs to salespeople, if you look at it that way, in a positive aspect, seems to be increasing when you're dealing with large and major accounts, and even for field teams. For the more of the inside SE teams and the teams that seem to do things more virtually, that ratio is either keeping the same, or from our point of view, I feel it's getting a little worse because we are automating the low end of the job. So they're now expected to work with 8 inside sales reps instead of 6 that they did before. So that ratio does seem to be increasing.
Great. All right. So we're getting some more questions, but I think what we'll do is we'll try and save those for the Q&A section. How about that?
Sure. I see there's a question from Yuji Higashi. So the question is, if you were to use one term to define the profession, what would you use? I would cheat and I would say pre-sales is what it's known kind of generically. I still prefer the term sales engineering. So by default, if someone asks, what's the role, what's the job, I say sales engineering. And then I think the second most popular term is solution architect. So that's kind of what I see around the world. So, okay, so we'll go on, Jeremy, and then we'll stop for some more questions at the end as well. So what are some things that you can do to prepare? So one of the questions, oops, did you take control back, Jeremy? No, I need to click. Okay.
Yeah, you should be able to. Okay. Yeah.
So one of the pieces of guidance that I always used to give people who were working for me, I would say, how big a shadow can you cast? Hey, there we go, right? And by this I mean that the good sales engineer he or she gives great demo, sorry, Peter, powerful presentations, does amazing discovery, and all these fundamental things that we SEs love to do. But the rockstar sales engineer does all that, plus helps other people within the organization. And that's what I mean by a shadow is, are you helping other people within not just the sales engineering organization, but within product management, development, support, even sales, become more efficient and get better? And the more parts of the organization that you can touch in terms of helping their efficiency, I think the better that makes you a sales engineer. And if you're looking to move from a senior sales engineer to a master or principal or distinguished engineer, whatever it's called, quite often the difference there is how are you helping other people? So it's not just being at 140% and helping the reps that you support bang down large deals. It's are you helping the rest of the SE pack and the rest of the company get better? So that's the question of shadow, and I think that's a really important thing for SEs to concentrate on. It's not just doing amazing demos and presentations. The second thing, and this is no big surprise, is that money is already the universal currency of sales. And what that means is that never lose sight of the fact that although your company may have amazing technology, be it software or hardware, ultimately it has to solve a business problem. And 99.5% of technology is purchased for one of three main reasons. We call them the three wise men and their big sister. And that's risk, revenue, and cost are the three wise men. So how can you help your customers increase their revenue? How can you help your customers decrease their costs? How can you help your customers mitigate risk, drive risk out of their personal and professional lives? And then the big sister is mission. So if you're dealing with government agencies and nonprofits, satisfying a mission. And quite often we can get really wrapped up in features and we forget to actually link that back to the business benefits in every single thing that we do. And what I've seen increasingly because of this consultative nature, the demands put on the SE is the more readily you can talk about money without sounding like a sales rep, the better off you're actually going to be. So follow the money. It's the number one rule of forensic detectives. It should be the number one rule of sales engineers as well. So that means that you need to be a rock star explainer, not only of the technical stuff, but also of the business stuff, and to be able to link those two together. And that doesn't mean always resorting to PowerPoint or always doing the dash to demo. Sometimes it just means having a conversation, or it means getting out your trusty pen or a whiteboard or an e-whiteboard and sketching something out. But being able to link together the business and the technology and explaining it to different audiences, I think that's probably next to attitude, the number one hiring attribute that hiring managers are going to be looking for over the next 5 years. So be a rock star. Next is to build relationships at all levels. Don't just be satisfied with speaking to individual contributors and first-line management. It's in your own interests, both personally and professionally, think about your network, to climb the corporate ladder and to make sure that you start communicating with directors, senior directors, executives within your client base. Now, not every executive has chief or vice in their title. If you're dealing with a large company, it could be a senior director, and that's okay. But always look for the opportunity to go one level higher up in the organization and build those relationships. And it's a long-term gain. I can think back to individual contributors and first-line managers I knew 20, 25 years ago who are now senior VPs in large organizations. And because I built that relationship and maintained that relationship, I have some amazing executive access, not just short-term and things I've done in the last 4 or 5 years, but longer-term as well. So don't be satisfied being pushed into IT or being pushed down to the corporate ladder and talking tech. aim up as well and try and build up your middle management and your executive network, both in your customer base and within your own company as well. That's vitally important. And then probably the last major piece of advice is you need to be constantly adapting. When we run our workshops around the world, I quite often challenge SEs that next time they get together for a cup of coffee, beer, meeting, whatever it might be, instead of complaining about RFPs and salespeople and quota and deals, spend a little bit of time talking about where the job is going over the next 2 or 3 years within your company and what you can do to anticipate it. Because if you are one of the people or you lead one of these organizations that is in adapting and is in the forefront, it's much better to be leading the change if you're in the front and causing the change rather than to be dragged along. And I've actually found over the years that SEs are more adaptable than salespeople. Salespeople hate change. Unless they've been given a better territory and a smaller quota, then they love change. But otherwise, sales reps hate change. But SEs kind of love change. Products are always being updated. Customers are always having new problems. There's new things for us to fix. So take that attitude and apply it to the actual job and the job function as well, and not just what you do. So that kind of leads to a call to action. So the first call to action is cast that big shadow. Don't just be satisfied with doing fantastic demos and amazing presentations and being the wizard of the whiteboard. Think about how you can help other people within your organization and make everybody better. And that, as I say, is the difference between a senior sales engineer and a master principal sales engineer. Secondly, machines can't build trusted relationships. You as an SE can, but you need to focus on it. So much as we love technology, much as we love the application of technology, you need to figure out how you're going to apply that to people as well. You're the only person who can do that. And lastly, we say be fabulous, or be absolutely fabulous. And FAB is actually an acronym. FAB stands for features, advantages, and benefits. And as sales engineers, we are fantastic at the F's. We love features. And we're fairly awesome at the A's, the advantages. And frankly, we suck at the benefits. We're not that good. Almost every conversation I have with a SE leader or a sales leader starts off with, I have great technical sales engineers, but, and then the but means they don't necessarily always do the greatest job of linking the benefits back to the features and advantages. So always think about how you can be fabulous and how you can link those benefits back to the features of your product and clearly state the advantages for the client. Kind of the last challenge around this is a concept that I call Monday morning behavior. Which is, what are you going to do differently? This is fundamental to all the workshops that we teach within Mastering Technical Sales. And it's, whenever you learn something new, you go to technical training, business training, professional skills training. The following Monday, when you are back out there on the sharp end, in front of a customer, or strategizing on a deal, doing self-improvement, enabling a partner, what things are you going to do differently? And then my challenge is, write it down and then review it with your boss, put a plan in place to make it happen. And if you focus on these changes, these new behaviors over the course of about 8 weeks, my wife, who's the educational psychologist, tells me that's what it takes for a new behavior to become a habit. And then that is a fantastic place for you to be. So always think about your Monday morning behavior. And before I hand it back to Jeremy and Scott, I think we'll finish off with a little bit of lighthearted humor. So I'm going to present to you the top 10 list of you're a sales engineer when. So there used to be a comedian here in the United States called David Letterman, a late night talk show. He always gave his top 10 list. So here's my top 10 list for you're an SE when. So number 10 reason. Everyone in the room waits for you to nod your head after the sales rep finishes speaking. I know there's about 100 people on the call. I'm pretty sure every single one of you is nodding your head at this point, going, yep, that's me. Number 9, you have more email addresses than pairs of shoes. Reason number 8 that you're a sales engineer The custom demo that you were working on the entire week just wasn't the product that the customer was expecting to see. But it was probably what the sales rep told you to show. And number 7, you spend more time changing the settings on your laptop than you do actually using it. Reason number 6, you're a sales engineer. The only people who call you after 3 p.m. on a Friday are salespeople who desperately need something by 9 a.m. on Monday, and your mother. Reason number 5, when every deal you're working on is going to be huge, I promise. Man, if I had money every time I heard that, I would be retired by now. When your salespeople think RFP stands for really fast paperwork, and they can give you an RFP on a Tuesday morning and it's done by Tuesday lunchtime. Reason number 3, you're an SE. You think this list is funny, but not technically accurate. Reason number 2, you have more servers down in your basement than your customer actually has in their data center or up in the cloud. And reason number 1, you know you're a sales engineer, that not a single deal is going to get signed this year without the involvement and expertise of everybody in this virtual room. And with that, Jeremy, I am going to hand it over to you, and we can take additional questions or pass it over to Scott. Up to you.
Yeah, let's go ahead straight into it. Thanks, John. That was fantastic. So what we're going to do is we have about 13 minutes here left. Don't forget to buy John's book if you haven't already. John, do you want to give yourself a shout out?
Sure. This is the main book, Mastering Technical Sales, and there's also an ebook called The Trusted Advisor, Sales Engineer you can find on Amazon sites all over the world. Thank you.
Great. Okay. And with that, we're going to go ahead into the next poll question, and I'll go ahead and pull it up right now. And the question is, how do you create demos and POCs today? And you should all see that in front of you now. We'll give it about 20 seconds. So if you don't mind just giving a click, choose one of those answers, and we're going to get to a cool demo. So stick with us. Okay, give about 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. Okay, and share the results here. We see that about 58% are using an in-house solution for this. Okay, that's very interesting. We have some specialized cloud users and a few commodity cloud as well. And it looks like nobody answered that they don't create demos or POCs. So that's always good news. All right. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the next slide, and I'll go ahead and give the ball to Scott.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah,
and,
just a second. Here you go. Wait. Okay, you should have it now.
No problem. Thanks, Jeremy, and thanks, John as well, and thanks everybody. I've been watching the chat as we've been going along and seeing a lot of excellent responses in there. And just for my part, similar to what John said at the start, I wouldn't say I chose the SE life, but the SE life chose me. I had the knowledge of our product within CloudShare for years with tech support, and I knew our customers' needs and wants. So I already had a kind of relationship bedrock with them, and used that same ability to spread into getting into the sales engineering, solutions engineering, whatever we want to call it these days. And with this, being virtually in front of our prospects, I could immediately understand the preference to be virtual. It gives the prospect a degree of control and protection, and it also works well for the SE. Jeremy, if you want to go to the next slide. Part of that is, as it works well for the SE and the company, everything you see here is it's all about efficiency and cost. That's the common theme that we're seeing here. And what CloudShare does is we provide on-demand IT environments in the cloud based on virtual machines. So a couple of the concepts that John was already talking about, that's what we're doing. So what we can do is do this for pre-sales, POCs, demos, training, development, support, all sorts. And what it does is lets you customize, save, and replicate those environments and move from the demo to the POC to the sale a little more efficiently. So let me show my screen here and give you a quick look at how that works. So from here, this is CloudShare. As an SC, what you would do is you would come along, create your environment, and this is what gives you the ability to set up your demo. In this kind of instance, we're looking at it as a situation where you've already got that demo ready to go. You're just kicking off, you're starting it. So you have the ability to take your environment. It's all already pre-created and customized to just the way you want it to be. It's got your virtual machine set up with whatever software you need to show off and demonstrate to a prospect. So we select that and click save, and it begins getting created. So it's the kind of thing that you can do well in advance of the demo starting, or just as you're walking into the room, or in this case, doing it remotely. So once the environment's created, it's something that's fully customizable. You can show this off to your prospects. You can give it to them as an example of what the final product will be. Let's look at another couple options here. Lets you have full control over the UI. You can brand it, customize it, include any videos or other content that you might want to have embedded with it. So part of that, that idea of having a canned scenario where you have everything preset, or you want a prospect to then walk through it on their own. So that, you've got the virtual machines, you can show off the software, everything's already preloaded there. But when it comes next to the state where you want to now hand off to a prospect to give them their own version. So rather than having to go through the process of downloading a trial and going through the different steps of installing something, if they have to install it on their own machines, whether physical or virtual, out at their location, this again keeps it in the cloud. You can essentially set up a simple email invitation to get sent off to that person. It can be as single reference or for everyone as a whole. And what it gives you after the fact is the ability to track that activity. So let's just look at something here from the last few days to give you an idea. You can dive into individual users as the SE and now monitor their access. So you can get a clear view of when they kicked off their trial, keep tabs of them, see how long they've got left, and also see their individual activity at the machine level. So you can get an idea of whether they're actually engaged. And that's that engagement level, which is kind of the key and kind of the goal that you're trying to get at here. So you can see where they're spending that time, if at all. And then working in the environment, again, what the idea here is that the prospect gets the same exact version of what you've been working on and what you've been showing to them. So they can jump into the virtual machines, work with them as they would in a real life scenario. So what we're doing here is essentially just taking that virtual remote desktop session and serving it up through a browser, and all you need is a internet connection to actually access it. And along with all the customization options in our UI, you can also go an additional step further and embed any external content that you might want to have there as well. So a survey form or any feedback that you might want to have, the ability to get a contact back from the prospect, all of that you can have embedded to the UI here. That's pretty much everything I wanted to look at there. So, we're kind of short on time, so thought we'd throw it back to Jeremy if you have any questions from the crowd.
Perfect. Okay. Just see if I can grab control back. Hold on 1 second. Okay. I think we were right about there. Perfect. Okay, Scott, thanks so much for the demo. And now we'll go ahead and ask the final poll question. Go ahead and pull that one up. Okay, and the question is, has providing a prospect with a virtual demo or POC ever helped you close a deal? So pretty interesting question here, and really interested to see what people answer. Oh, great. Filling out answers quickly. This group is on the ball. Okay, we'll give it another couple seconds. Okay, fantastic. And we'll share the results so everyone can see. And there you go. So at least once or twice, and 34% have answered that it's closed many times. So good stuff. All right, so moving on from there, we'd like to thank John and Scott for their time. Great presentations, great demo. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead through the Q&A, and it looks like pretty much everything has been answered through, I mean, we're really running out of time anyway. But John, do you want to maybe take one or two of these questions, and rather than using the chat, do you want to just go ahead and answer that for everyone else to hear?
Sure. So there seems to be two main themes. One is about the role of metrics, and one is about SEs and AMs blending together. So let's hit metrics first. This question's about what role will KPIs be used to measure impact? So what kind of metrics should you be looking at? And I'm actually thrilled to say that over the last 3 or 4 years, there's been a lot of companies that are starting to focus on this, and not just looking at what I call boring sales operations metrics, like revenue per something, but actually looking at the impact of change on the organization. So looking at things like win rates for RFPs and POCs, what position are you likely to convert a POC into money, when you're not likely to do that, linking what's in the pipeline to training and making sure that your SEs are prepared to actually support what's coming along in the pipeline, optimizing process. So I generally look at metrics in 4 areas. There's people metrics, which is how good are the people, how to make them better. There's finance metrics, which is money. There's process, which is how can you make the people become more effective. Then there's customer metrics, people actually give you money, whether it's end user customer or partners. So there's a raft of metrics out there now, companies utilizing them, and they're utilizing them not just looking backwards at QPRs, but looking forward and being proactive. And I always believe that an SE organization that really understands metrics can actually become a proactive SE organization and isn't constantly reacting to the customer or the rep that screams the loudest, but actually can have data-driven decisions as opposed to emotional decisions. So that's a good thing. Second big question is around, is the role of the rep and the AE, or the rep and the SE, ever going to get together? And it has done in some sales situations, or predominantly what I call the hard sales, where you're selling industrial polymers and heat pumps, piping, things like that. So classic mechanical, chemical, electrical engineering. In regular technology, I don't see that happening. There are certainly hybrid sales specialists, people who have a blend of technology and sales skills, and they're quite often overlays. So when you acquire a new company or a new product comes out, and you have people whose job is really to help the regular enterprise account rep fill the pipeline. Additionally, the success rate of SEs going over into sales is around 33%, which I measure by, are they still in the job after 2 years, and have they hit the quota in at least one of those years. And that metric has remained pretty much the same over the last 10 or 15 years. So there are plenty of SEs who go over into sales and burn out, but the ones who go over to sales and stick actually do amazingly well. And if you look at some high-tech CIOs out there now, Larry Ellison, Mark Benioff, Tom Siebel, they were all SEs or highly technical product marketing managers before they got into sales positions and then ultimately into their CEO role. So I think it prepares you to be a jack of all trades and a really good general manager by having the SE position.
Great. All right. Well, we have to just about wrap it up now. So we really appreciate your time, John, Scott. Thank you guys so much for making it out. And thank you to the audience for participating. And we hope you all enjoyed. And we hope to see you at the next CloudShare webinar. So have a good day or evening or night, wherever you are. And see you next time.